We should... Ladies and gentlemen, my brothers, my sisters, how are you? It's been days. I've been lonely. I hope you've missed me. I have missed you. It is the 29th of October. 30 days has September, April, June, and November. There's another... There's Thursday and Friday. Friday, I think, is the last trading day of the month. Yes! And then, can I tell you something? This may surprise you. Or not. I do not like Halloween. It's great for kids. It does upset me. The celebration of candy. But it's the adults. I mean, that really annoys me. And you think I've got a sense of humour? I hope I do. I hope I could speak more slowly. I don't like dressing up. Fancy dress, not my thing. I don't know if this happened when you were at school, a long time ago for me. But there were days where, as a gift or as a charitable donation, you could come in dressed as you wish. I went to school where you had to wear a uniform, and not any kind of uniform, a brown coloured uniform. That was a challenge. And so I'm a person that likes my clothing. You would think maybe that I would relish the dress down day. But nope, little me, little Hugh was not having any of it. I went in wearing the uniform. And Halloween and parties, it's a bit like that. I guess every day, as the acid capitalist, every day I write the tune, every day I write the song. Chapter 1, we didn't really get along. Anyway, I'm now quoting Elvis Costello. That is arguably one of my favorite ever songs. Every day I write the book, Elvis Costello. Check it out. Every day I dress like an idiot. So every day is Halloween. So maybe that's why I don't like Halloween. Today, the 29th of October, So what happens? I spend about 2 hours drinking my juice, the avocado, the cucumber, the protein powder, the collagen, the what do you call them? Flavodians, the blackberries, lots and lots of blackberries, and lots of other things. Oh, and I have my 4 raw eggs. I'm going to get salmonella. I do worry. Would you believe that takes quite a while, and it takes about 4 or 5 cups of coffee with my Do you think I'm going to discuss? We're starting at the beginning. Putting on my blue ring. Thanks, Rick. Press is always appreciated. Yeah, I'm talking about putting my MCT oil in my coffee. Later, maybe I will be talking about modern monetary theory. The horror. Stay with me. But I've got to get out of this luxury, beautiful prison. Plus, we are prepping the house, repairing the house from the 35 weeks of constant exploitation for the rentals. We're painting, we're sanding, you name it. So I go to the gym, and of course, after that gigantic juice, I am sated. The amount of protein powder, 4 eggs, almond butter. I must consume well over 100 grams of protein in the morning. So I ain't hungry. So after the gym, And, sorry, like, but we will get there. My God, this is going to be a long show. Long silence. I'm getting apps. I have not drank for about, I was going to say 6 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I don't know, a long time. I've not been out. Weekends, I just catch up with sleep. That's fine when it gets to about the 21st of December. I'm going to ramp it up. Talking of which, next week, I'm going to be in New Orleans. I think against my better judgment, I'm really excited to see New Orleans. But there's an investor conference. I'd read it to you, but I don't want to be mean. George Gammon is coming to stay with me this weekend. Interesting. And I'm going with him. And then I'm planning to be in New York the following weekend. Guys, I'm going to be in New York. Take me out. Show me cool bars to go. Maybe I'll drink some alcohol, maybe. Anyway, but this afternoon, I sat in Bar Select, which is about, I think, 97 years old, this bar. Beautiful. I sat inside with my computer. I drank more coffee. And I just pondered. I pondered all day. I don't know what people must think of me. Drank coffee and sparkling water. And I thought about intelligence. And I thought intelligent people, or I posited the question, signs of intelligence. Could it be constantly wondering? L'étoile vagabonde, the wandering star. There's a great quote that idiots, I'm sure this isn't a direct quote, but idiots, they're dead sure about every damn blinking thing that they're doing in their life. And I mean, who does that sound like? That sounds like these communities, these meme-like communities on Twitter, as an example. The gold community. The thing about the thing that drives me crazy, and you could say Bitcoin as well, but tribal communities seeking to apply intellectual thought, failing with leadership. I mean, I got included on some comment today from some joker with about 56,000 followers. That's a lot. And he was positively vile about me. I don't even know who he is. And I mean, I'm bullish Bitcoin. Go figure. But the thing about, especially, so I'm going to labor on gold because I've been publishing into the gold community as we hit that high of 4,300. That blistering ascent. Silver breaching that astonishingly long breaching the high of the previous bull market from 1980. So, wow, 45 years, I think possibly the longest bear market ever. So I've been broadcasting into that community, and that struck me today. That's the thing that I find disconcerting, is that every tweet, which of course is a rebuttal to me, which is fine, that's good, but it's dead sure about every damn thing. No doubts, no buts, no maybes, dead sure. And that is idiotic. Forgive me, I'm not calling you idiotic. You're here, you're listening to me. You may be hanging up. Sorry, goodbye. And intelligence, it doesn't mean necessarily education or accumulated knowledge. It must mean some kind of accumulated knowledge. It must mean that. Education, I didn't go to any great. My educational background is whatever. People judge it. I was, again, the conference in New Orleans, and it has like amazing thought leaders. Never heard of any of them. People that don't manage money, but they're great money leaders. Let me tell you, No member of the famous five will be in attendance next week. Oh my God, I'm doing such a disservice to the New Orleans investment thing. But I looked up one of the guys, one of the speakers. They're all guys. I mean, Martina de Buthy, whatever, is on. So she's a female. She's not a guy. Former Fed member, something or other. A very good talking head. But yeah, I fell into that trap. I looked at his degree because it promotes where he studied in America is very much Harvard, etc. And he was none of that. And even I felt myself going, yeah, who am I? I went to Strathclyde University. I mean, you're not struggling to call it university. That would be unkind. But at the time, the UK definitely widened the definition of universities, and there were a lot of polytechnical institutions that were then deemed to be able to call themselves universities. So Strathclyde, good on it. And in my school, my school was like Shark Tank. It was just like the bravest, most courageous people survived. So it's not education. And I'm laboring on the thought because this is the acid breath. Forgive me, I go off and I speak rapidly, and then I remember that half of you are in America and probably have little idea as to what I'm actually saying. I'm sure you are like the atoms and is it the atoms and the electrons around the atom? Or is it the neutron with the electrons around it? At school we learn that thing, it's like the globe, the earth, and you've got little moons and their electrons and boom, positive, negatives. And it's all wrong. That everything, that there's no little cubes, there's no little cubes. Cubes? I've got no education, intelligence, spheres. There are no spheres in that world. You can put your hand right through it. There's nothing there. It's vibration. I love the notion that in nature everything is vibration. Vibration. And I hope you are receiving positive vibrations from this show. I always think my start to any speech, and this is really a speech, it is that car crash on the other side of the road that causes the traffic jam on the other side, because everyone kind of looks over and goes, oh, ew, nasty. And of course we all slow down, and as the rate of velocity decelerates, then you create a traffic jam. Welcome to the traffic jam, which is the early stage of acid breath. But intelligence, I was pondering that because I've always been, I hope not smug, but proud of the insight that being new to the world of hedge funds, not now, but at the turn of this century, some 25 years ago, that I reasoned, before the iPhone, before the metaverse, we still had Microsoft. We had spreadsheets. Chinese don't have their own spreadsheet company. But yeah, the highest return on intelligence, I thought, my supposition was that the highest return on intellectual capital, the highest return on being intelligent was to be a hedge fund manager. And I reasoned that maybe it wasn't intelligent to try and be more intelligent than the most intelligent people on the planet. And I still stand by that. I'm still thinking of the atoms. I'm still caught up in Schrodinger's cat. That cloud, the conception. Again, it sounds like intelligence. The conceptions of every possible outcome occurring now. And I was reading when I was having my juice this morning. Did you read it about the kind of asteroid? The thing is surely it's an asteroid, and it's kind of going into the sun's orbit, and its orbit and its speed are deemed to be irregular. Hint, hint, I'm making this up. Not the story. And they're waiting for it to pull out of the sun's orbit as being prima facie evidence that this isn't an asteroid, that it's actually an extraterrestrial vessel. I think that must be what's he called? Avi Loeb, the Israeli guy, the Harvard University, the head of the astronomy. And he's been quite, I like it, it's provocative, E.T. He makes a big thing about these unexplained objects, and he thinks he's found another one, and it's out there just now, kind of going round the sun. Artificial probes, how exciting. I mean, he does have a 2021 book, the first signs of intelligent life beyond Earth. The first signs of intelligent life are certainly not to be found in the acid breath. But true intelligence is all about asking questions. Keep asking questions. Why is the sky blue? And of course the challenge for all of us is, and I've said this in using different words. So I'm going to say the same thing with other words. So what did I say? The last time I was referring to Leonhard Euler, the 19th century mathematician. And I was talking about Beethoven. Great artistic, just great minds. Different forms of processing and different forms of intelligence. Pitch perfect, different mixing of senses, a perfect identification of sound via color, perhaps. And I was saying that my best ideas are when I'm not hunched over a computer with a spreadsheet and looking at charts. That I'm more intelligent when my mind isn't cluttered. My intelligence explodes when there's less noise. Now, I mentioned charts. Again, I'd welcome all of you. I need some of you to come over to my Substack. Here is the advert, I believe this is a valid and an informative and valuable service. It is presently 10 to 10. I will not finish the whole gig until well after midnight tonight. I would like to go to bed now, but I have passion and enthusiasm for the task at hand. But I'd like some of you to pay for it by coming over to Substack or Patreon, or buying a hat. You'll see it on the various links. Yeah, it's $100, stupid hat. Quite cool hat, actually. Do I have any of these hats around? None immediately around. I always have hats. Got my goggles, but I don't have a hat at hand. I will find. Oh, you hold on a second. I am going to find this damn hat. I have found. Oh, this is the wrong hat. Sorry if you're listening, but I'm in your ears. You can't see how ridiculous I look. I found my favorite. Oh my God. I think it's. I found my hat from Mongolia. Some dead animal. Oh, there we go. Yeah. I had the tail rubbing my nose. Now I've got 2 feet squeezing my nose. Doesn't really go with these glasses. No, I didn't mean that one. And again, if you're on Substack, you could see you could see the video. But I meant, get an acid acid capitalists. Get Camp 3.0. I don't know. Lots of colours. Or join Substack and Patreon. Forgive me. Advert is over, but on Substack. So I wasn't doing the podcast last night, but I was still working. And it was so joyful. I had the 225, whether it's joyful for the audience, I had the 225 constituent stocks of the Nikkei. And I had a carousel and I could look at everyone. And I had the price data going back to the beginning of the 1970s. I mean, there wasn't even a corporate Japan really, in the beginning of the 1970s. There was no NASDAQ. And in our damn haste to try and make money in the conceit that somehow we are more intelligent than our predecessors, this rush, we leave so much behind. We press our face so close to the screen. You're lucky if people look at 3 months of data. I was looking last night at 55 years of data. And again, when you unclutter the mind, the intelligence explodes. Nature is telling us things all the time. And very much nature. You want to see nature in finance? Bring up a 50. This is all of my life. I mean, I tell the girls I'm 43. No, the 55 years. You want to see nature and listen to nature. Look at those charts. And something profound is going on in Japan. You can see it. You can see it consistently. The pattern, these profoundly compelling price patterns, they're there. So yeah, again, if you glance on Twitter or my Instagram, Hugh Hendry official, beware of imposters. So I've created a little 1 minute 27 where we've sped up all of the charts as you get 225 Japanese stocks. And I'm using the music of Jean-Michel Jarre. Look him up. Kind of French Mike Oldfield. Oxygen was his big thing. And then he had this follow-up, which was kind of the sounds of China. And I used to listen to that. I think in 1985, China was so mysterious. And now China, I can't really stop lambasting it for its mercantilism. And then finally cheetah. Mind without memory. Is that, the Indians, they want to say that's consciousness. I don't know. I hear you. A life without prejudice, yes. But there's memory in those 225 charts. Think of it. 225 charts, 55 years of data. Wow. So rich. Anyway, right. We got a show to do, Mr. H. And apparently we look at the day's economic data. And there's none. Yesterday, however, we got the Conference Board's consumer confidence. And they quote it in decimal points, which is irritating. Without the decimal points, it dipped modestly to 95. I'm rounding up. From a revised 96, I'm rounding up, in September. And that made a 6-month low. And it was below expectations. I mean, who cares? But it was below expectations. And apparently it reflected the consumer confidence hitting a 6-month low. Would you believe? It indicated growing consumer worries. Wow. I mean, it's incredible, this stuff. Worries about job availability. And did we just see Amazon, UPS, General Motors, quite a slew of high-profile job cuts being announced. after this data release, so that wouldn't have helped. 28%. I mean, again, they write it 27.8. 27.8. I'm using the decimal point just to prove a point. 27.8 of respondents anticipate fewer jobs in the next 6 months. What does that decimal point add to that statement? The conceit of modernity. Why can't they just say 28% of respondents, or like a third of respondents, nearly a third, are anticipating fewer jobs? Language. And that despondency with regard to jobs, again, that was the highest since April. So what I did, I'm looking at it just now. I've got a chart of the Consumer Confidence Index, and there's another one. There's two. Is it the Michigan board, and then there's a conference board. And would you believe they move in perfect lockstep? And I'm looking at it. I'm looking at 35 years of data, which I think is all of it. And 100, I would say, is the mean. I would say to you that in the car crash of the great financial recession, the consumer confidence got as low as 25. I'd say to you that its highest point was 150. And that was either right before, I mean, it looked as if it was a pretty cute coincidence with the NASDAQ high. So it might have some resonance in terms of, it might capture, it might put you on guard. It might be worthy of consideration when I look at that. So your outliers, 150 on the top side, 25 on the bottom side, and what did we say presently? 95. So actually, I look at that, but yeah, 95. And I was surprised. I was surprised actually when I think about it now. Less surprised. The low point with the COVID fear, it got. I'm looking at it. Where did it go? 85? I can't quite see. I can't quite match it up. But not 25. So, consumer board. Market reaction was kind of, that's the market, that's not me. And again, we had the Fed. We'll come back to the Fed. The Fed cut interest rates. Yeah, we all knew that. Absolute certainty. Am I going to talk about the Fed? No, I don't know. I'm going to say something. The big surprise, J. Powell he's like, it's not a certainty that we cut rates. Oh, we're arguing. We're not sure. But that had a big impact on. That had a big impact. Didn't have a big impact on the shape of the curve. Kind of mostly parallel shift, the short and the long end. I was saying going into the Fed meeting at our. Was I saying this? I hope I was saying this. That the big risk, the most pertinent risk, I think, with these Fed meetings just now is the direction of the Treasuries, which have got maturity, 10-year plus maturities, of which there are not many, like 20% of the total, if not less than 20%, but let's call it 20%. That would the price sell off, would the yield rise? We've seen the yield inch cautiously down since the highs recorded at the end of January this year, 480 to 4.95 last week. Would the bond market go, why are you cutting interest rates? That feels inflationary. And again, we're going to discuss that because I've been pondering that in my bar in the Caribbean today. 10-year above 4% again, modestly, 405. And again, there was like, small violin, we're Fed governors. Oh, the data is cancelled. We're flying blind. Rubbish. There's enough data to make decisions. Which is my lead into on the day where we had the Mag 7 results. What we had before that was we had the magnificent cat, not the cat in the box, Caterpillar. Almost a $300 billion, a third of $1 trillion market cap stock. Cat is one hell of a great business. And actually, when I was reviewing the Nikkei last night, its peer group, it's a great industry. The Japanese, there's a plethora, it's a great word, of Japanese competitors. Komatsu, I think Kubota, and quite a few others with the name Japan and heavy and machinery in the titles. And they've all done really, really well. And they're all 20% plus EBIT margin businesses with expanding top line. Caterpillar had a positive Z score today. I mean, it was up 12%. Gotta like that. 12% on a $300 billion company. And the thing that caught my mind was Caterpillar exceeded analyst estimates. I'm not going to talk about earnings per share and decimal points. Revenue for the quarter, for the third quarter. And again, think small violin on the Fed. Oh, there's no data. There's data everywhere. If you're less busy and more contemplative and willing and open to receive and listen to the universe around you. And what did Caterpillar whisper? It didn't whisper anything. It shouted over here. Revenue was exceeded. Revenue estimates. I mean, write in and tell me if I'm wrong, but this was my reading. Actual revenue was, and I'm going to use decimal points here because it's billions, 17.64 billion. Let's call it 18 billion. And that beat the consensus estimate. And normally you're thinking, 17.64 beat estimates of 17.5. No. Actual revenue of 17.64 billion beat the consensus estimate of 16.75 billion. They beat revenues by a yard, by $1 billion, $1,000 million of variance in the estimates. And they were talking to the analysts and they were firming up estimates for the third quarter only 5 or 6 weeks ago. And they're like, oops, wow. We sold $1 billion more kit than we thought. That is, I don't think I've ever come across that. But I'm very excited about that. I love that. I don't care about earnings. Earnings were amazing. $1 billion beat on revenue in a quarter. Wow. And where's that coming from? Is it diggers? Is it... it must be the gold. The gold miners are hoovering up gold out of the Earth's crust, and I'm sure they are. But of course, for Caterpillar, it was their energy and transportation business. Sales up 17%. That must be quarter over quarter. No, it can't be quarter over quarter. A 31% rise in power generation sales. That's the backup, the generators. Caterpillar makes the generators for the AI data centers. Boom, baby. And I read, and I don't know, again, apocryphal nonsense. I mean, this is one of these things that's just kind of fun. It's about the Dow Jones. We never talk about the Dow Jones. I feel sorry for the Dow Jones. It always pops up in history books. But today, Caterpillar overtook Nvidia as the best performing stock year to date in the Dow Jones. And Nvidia's like smoking a cigar saying, I don't care because I became the first, was it $5 trillion company today? Did you read that? Yeah, 5 trillion. Apple's 4 trillion. Microsoft is 4 trillion. That's 13 trillion in market capitalization. That's almost half the GDP of America in 3 companies. Amazing. And talking of which, so Nvidia. And yesterday they announced $1 billion equity line into Nokia. Now, you've heard me talk about Nokia and Ericsson. Nokia, Finnish, listed in the stock market of Finland. There's an ADR on the American exchange, and its Swedish competitor, Ericsson. And these were amongst the largest capitalized companies in the world during the TMT boom at the turn of the century. And Nokia had a phone before everyone had an iPhone. And the Nokia share price declined in the same manner as Amazon, which is to say it fell 90%, if not more. But unlike Amazon, it never recovered. And my point to you all was it didn't recover because the Chinese, as is their wont, strategically at the sovereign level, they decided that radio access networks, the Gs, the 3G, the 4G, the 5G, the base station and the base station telecom software technology was where China had to be. Just think of the sensitivity and being embedded into the real nodes, the real human network of the global community of what 4 billion people with mobile phones, if not more. And so they forfeited the right to earn profit, and they achieved their objective. So Nokia and Ericsson's competition became Huawei. I'm sure it's not how you pronounce it. And they had an immensely large, powerful, and determined competitor that was willing to forgo profit to beat Nokia and Ericsson. And so they just stayed low. And for those of you who are subscribed to the Substack and the Patreon, you'll see these 50-year charts in Japan, and you'll see that we've had 25-year periods, not compressions, price compression below a peak established 25 years ago. And like silver, and these peaks, albeit the silver goes back a further 9-10 years to 1980. The Japanese peaks are the last day of the 1980s. So literally the first day of the 1980s, silver peaks at $50. The last day of the 1980s, Japanese stocks peak at 40,000. And we're seeing in all those 55-year charts, this compression being breached and prices beginning to trade higher. And poor Nokia and Ericsson on their ass. So, and just last week, we mentioned when we were doing Z-scores, we came across Ericsson had results which were well received. And the stock was up 20%. I mean, these are, like I say, they fell 80, 90% 25 years ago and they haven't recovered. So they're flotsam. They move up and down erratically. And it was Nokia's turn today or yesterday to be up 20%. Not on results, but because Nvidia did another one of these deals where they bought $1 billion of Nokia stock. That's 3% of the company. Surprised it only took 3% and not 33% of the company. NVIDIA want in on telecom technology at the base station. And so listen to what Jensen said. He said, we are bringing telecom technology leadership back to America for the first time in decades. That's what I've been talking about. A push to reduce reliance on what they call foreign telecom technologies, Chinese telecom technologies. So this is what I've been arguing. Sometimes I actually make some sense. Maybe that's why you're listening. But then it's like, okay, but why Nokia, not Ericsson? Why not just, confetti, give it out? And it would seem that NVIDIA's choice of Nokia, and I think they actually said this, was owing to its deep US roots. And you're like, it's Finnish! The share price has looked as if the business is finished, FINISHED, as opposed to the country and being FIN, is it double N? I think double NISH. But in 2016, Nokia acquired Bell Labs, which is like, in the history books, that's your American innovation hub. What a smart deal, getting the benefit of it 9 years later. It's like, whoa, we're American. And NVIDIA took the bait. And of course, Nokia is committed to buying $1 billion in the GPUs. And the price made a 10-year high today. I actually think you should all be looking to get exposure to, what's it called, radio access networks. And let me tell you why. The 6G thing is coming. Don't hold your breath waiting, because it's going to be a 2030, 2031, 32, 33, 34 thing. In 10 years' time, the 6G is going to be, but we can, the way time moves, we think we can comprehend 10 years. Can we truly comprehend how our life will be in 10 years' time? Hard. And the 6G rollout, wow. What it can do, wow. So your speed, your 10 to 20 gigabit, BPS. Forgive me, I'm an idiot. You're talking about, I think it's 1 terabyte per second being transferred. It's like, those 4K. I said to you that when Apple put essentially a 4K resolution camera on its phone, it destroyed cable TV. There's a statement which I think, if you look at the adoption of those cameras and you look at the share price and the relative performance of those stocks, you will see that 4K cameras killed not the video star, but the cable TV star. But try, because I record this thing on different devices and I've got files, try transferring a 4K video file, like a 1 hour video. Takes you all day. That would be instant. What else does the 6G do? I took notes. Latency. Blah, 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 blah. Just breathtaking. Breathtaking. But to get there, the 6G rollout. So here we are in the midst of the data centers. Wait till they start doing the rollout on the telephone base stations. They're estimating that capex per person for a mobile carrier is going to rise from $74 per person last year to $116. What is that? That's 26 plus 16. That's 32. That's $42. And then I was like, oh, so, again, in preparation for this show, I said, hey, digital assistants, tell me the mobile customers for the three largest mobile groups in the world in terms of subscriptions. Would you wish to guess? Clearly, number one is China Mobile, and it has 1 billion subscribers. Billion times $42. It's going to have to spend, that one company's going to have to spend $42 billion over the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Reliance, Indian, of course, a lot of Indians, 475 million. They're going to have to spend $20 billion. We're at 60 cumulative. America Mobile, the Mexicans, 300 million. 12 billion they've got to spend on this. They reckon 2.5% of global GDP investment by about 2030. So that is 2.5% of 120, $125 trillion. That is what? $3.5 trillion a year. I think that's a year. And so you can understand why Jensen's in there and he's buying some equity. He's not even buying, he's being given free equity. Pays for itself. It's going to be a huge. No one's talking about it. So, and when everyone's talking about data centers, maybe you should be talking about. Keep forgetting what it's called. Try and find my notes. The new buzzword is going to be AI RAN, artificial intelligent powered radio access networks. Is it in your portfolio? And look at, I love doing this. I'm going to look at the Nokia. I'm looking at the ADR chart. And I'm really, where have I got it? I've got it trading at last price, about 7 something, call it 750. Really, you want to, really, because I don't want to be holding on to this for the next 25 years at the same price. So I'd like to see it above 10. But the March 2000 high was on the ADR was $62. So in my world, in the patterns that I see when I try and listen and meditate to what the universe is telling us, is there's a good chance this stock, if all this artificial intelligent powered radio across networks comes through, that it takes out the year 2000 high with this almighty delay. And if it takes out the 60 and this, and Nokia really have the leadership, which Jensen suggested they have, and they go on to take the leadership powered by these AI chips, it will exceed that year 2000 high by 5 times. Stock that is 7.5, I'm going to be very bold, in the next 10 years, I think it could be trading 300. Boom! I should be selling equity. That's your edge. Right. Let's see if we can close this show by opening my mind. I'm looking at the screen font. And I found a new, I know the font's pissing everyone off on Twitter. I love it. Screw you. People write me saying, I really hate your font. Go fuck yourself. I don't care. I love it. Anyway, forgive me the gratuitous bad language. But I found a new font today, which I will not be using. I'm using it just for my notes. But it's called, I think it's called Phosphate. And it's cool. Anyway, so I've used it, and I'm looking at a title, and I'm going to try and ad-lib this thing. We are going to close today's show. And when I say close, we're going to be talking about this for half an hour, I suspect. And we're going to be talking about the dangerous comfort of collateral. What? So this is when I go back I had, actually I didn't, I've ran out of it, but I was suggesting that I put MCT oil in my coffee, a refined blend of coconut oil, which kind of fires up the mind. And actually, another thing that I take, I'm telling you all my secrets. I'm rummaging. I'm rummaging. But I tell you another thing I take. Do you hear this noise? It's like a sounds like horses galloping. I like that. Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Beautiful packaging. Let me put it on the camera. And so I take this product called Genius. Should I tell you about this? Should I not tell you about this? A great friend of mine, Peter, it's his company, and it is. I get how many do I get? I get 30 plant-based pills for brain power, and it has a little bit of cannabis in it, and a few other things, all taken from ancient herbal remedies for the mind. And this and the MCT oil, I'm a genius. A genius in my own bathroom, if you will. And today, I forgot to take, it's empty, and I didn't take any MCT oil. But this section, we're going to talk about modern monetary theory. Oh my God. It was sparked. I came across a YouTube interview by that prickly Australian character, Steve Keen, Professor Keen. He was a great guy, Australian economics professor, great crusader for global warming, brings amazing nuance or clarity in terms of how we should try and, if we're going to model the economic world, let's try and model it properly with intelligent discourse and with systems which, we're getting closer and closer. I mean, the weather forecast, for instance, which is a very unbelievably complicated process. No one really bitches about bad weather forecasts anymore. But economic forecasts are hopeless. So Steve's very good at saying, come on, guys, you're using the wrong model. But he's a prickly funny guy. He infuriates. He's his own worst enemy. Who does that sound like? Sounds a bit like me. It's funny. I took him and his girlfriend. He's a bit of a cat, Steve. He's in his 70s now. Always got girlfriends. Good on you, Steve. I took him for dinner. He was visiting in London. And I might also add, his model, and very much aligned with Hyman Minsky. I mean, he called the 2008 crash. He called it. He really, really called it. And I could listen to Steve all day long. Check out his show with the Lex Friedman podcast he did. Top 5 must listen to economic discourse, I would say, for me. If you want to understand and widen your understanding about economics, listen to that. Don't listen to the planetary warming up thing. You don't need it. It's not for that. But I've listened to that so many times. I've fallen asleep to that so many times. Is Steve one of the famous 5? Is Steve? Yeah, Steve could be one of the 5 that actually understands money. Could be. People always say deficits are inflationary, talking about idiots are always certain. In the US, oh my God, let's talk about deficits. Let's go. I've got a table here. This day off thing. I'm there. Like, so US fiscal deficit, the year 2020, anyone say COVID pandemic? 15% of GDP, $3 trillion. Wow. 2021, 12% of GDP. I mean, we were recovering, still 12, another 3 trillion. 2022, at last, a sizable reduction to 6%. It halved. That's 1.5 trillion. 2023, it went up. How the hell does it go up? Possibly it could be the interest expense. Out of control spending. So another $1.5 trillion plus. Last year, it went up again. I mean, you can't make up how bad this is. Almost 2 trillion deficit. And this year, it's kind of going to be kind of the same as last year, a bit less. I don't want to say tariffs are beginning to make an impact and reduce it somewhat. But close on $2 trillion. So trillions, 3, 3, 6, 9, 12. It's like $13 trillion, almost half of American GDP in deficit spending in the last 5 years. Inflation. It's got the gold price zooming up. It's got silver breaking out of a 45-year price compression. Except the famous 5 say, hold on one cotton pig a moment. This is more complicated than you folk think. Deficits. I'm going to sugarcoat it. Say deficits ain't necessarily inflationary. Stephen, an Aussie accent, would say, deficits. The government deficit is fucking not inflationary. It's not printing money. Whoa. Do you want me to say that again? I'm not brave enough. When the government runs a deficit, it spends more money than it receives. And say you're the lucky contractor, and the government spends, the last thing it does in the year is it spends another $1 billion on your services. And that's $1 billion more than it received that year, that fiscal year, in revenue. What's going on there? Well, the government has got this, it's like an automatic mortgage. Sorry, I'm thinking about myself here. That's funny. Actually, look, I can see the moon. I can see the moon. I saw the whole of the moon, not tonight, but a great song from Fisherman Blues, the Waterboys. It runs like it's got a 24/7 overdraft facility. You spend over it, no limits. It's like an Amex black card. It's better than an Amex black card. When the government runs a deficit, essentially there are more deposits. The spending ends up as in someone's bank account, which is a liability of the government. It's a bank reserve. And then there's a kind of, your bank manager, the economic system, is like, what's going on? And typically you will issue government borrowing to the private sector, and the private sector will take those bonds. It always takes those bonds, and we might argue about the price it agrees to take those bonds, the yield, but it takes those bonds, and it pays for those bonds with money, which implicitly takes the swollen reserve by the deficit spend. It takes that reserve back down. Nothing's really changed in the private sector. You've gone from having had $1 billion in bank reserves, or $1 billion in deposits, which are the liability of the banking sector. Liability of the government sector, I should say. And the deposits have gone down. And from the private sector, so you had this asset, which is your deposit deposit and everything. One is the mirror of the other. So the deposit's your asset, someone's liability, it's the government's liability. And you've essentially swapped, the private sector has swapped one asset for another. Bank deposits have been swapped for treasuries. That's all that's happening. Let's think about that. Let's do some acid breathing. I issued a little 2-3 minute video on Twitter X today claiming, well, not claiming, so factually the American government or the Federal Reserve of New York and Mr. Benjamin Strong, they sterilized something in the 1920s that the gold standard, and the gold standard as a mechanism for controlling and allowing equilibrium to be established with international trade in the 1920s. You as a sovereign generating a trade surplus, the economic system was there to kind of be the coach and the cheerleader. Oh, I found an acid hat. Okay, hold on a second. Let's put the acid hat on. Hey, Aziz, buy an acid hat. Economic system is like, wow, this is so good. You're running a trade surplus with the rest of the world. May we congratulate you by bestowing our pleasure on you. And the pleasure would be the transfer of wealth from the rest of the world. And that would take the form of a gold transfer. And that gold transfer, it's a metallic metal. It's a physical transfer. It's one of the reasons why it's no longer a monetary metal. One of the reasons we talk about Bobby Digital, latency and movement and the like. But the metallic metal coming into the country is the same thing as the deficit. It's an increase in reserves. And that reserve is high-powered money. And that is the mechanism, that is the thing that can create inflation. Like inflation in your supermarket basket of goods and services. Reserves, total reserves, high-powered money. And so gold is coming in the 1920s. And if left unchecked, the private sector banks will use that gold as high-powered money, as collateral to lend more to the private sector. So the private sector will boom even more. And the whole theory underlying that was that America would boom and boom and boom and boom and boom and get so rich with wages and the like, that first of all, you'd have a mountain of additional demand to buy things, and that demand would spill over to the rest of the world. So you'd inject American demand for European goods and services, and it would bring Europe back from the brink of the appalling deflation that it was suffering under a hard money regime. And the Federal Reserve said, nah, we don't want that. And so we use this word, they sterilized. They sterilized the excess reserves. They sterilized the gold. And they didn't allow it as a high-powered money component. They didn't allow for it. They took away from the power of the private sector banking community to expand loans. And that's deemed to be that was an error. You can see, I can understand the background and the reasoning, but it made the system fragile. It broke the system. There was a huge deficit of demand for goods and services in the United Kingdom, especially United Kingdom, but Germany and elsewhere. And the UK almost, almost lost its democracy. There's only so much because the pressure was built. The biggest price, and it was deemed to be that prices were too high. Not that you had accelerating rates of price inflation in the British economy, but simply that the absolute level of prices, because they'd been re-established with gold at a very overvalued level for the needs of the British economy, that rather than devalue the metallic metal, we'd have to devalue human beings through wages. And that doesn't work. And then you had America rejecting the mechanism which would have restored equilibrium. They broke that by sterilizing the gold. Anyway, so we don't live in a world today where it's a metallic monetary asset, gold, increasing reserves. It is fiscal deficit spending. And the fiscal deficit spending, like I said to you, the first impulse is it increases bank reserves. And that is high-powered money. So it's an asset of the bank and a liability of the public sector. And just like gold in the 1920s, the private sector could, with velocity of circulation, transform that. Like each $1 billion would become, I don't know, $1 trillion of private sector credit. And that's, again, which takes us from $4 to $5 trillion of M0 in America to like 22 trillion of broad money. That's the multiplication of the high-powered money. But high-powered money is the source of all inflation. Okay, let's continue. Let's say another Steve Keen and modern monetary theory. And it's like, do you believe this? Tell me, stop me when it's wrong, okay? Leave prejudice to one side. But yeah, because I looked at it and it was the language and it was awkward. I was like, ooh, let's take it on tonight. So here goes again. The government deficit expands private net wealth. I mean, imagine getting Stern Druckenmiller to say that. It's never going to happen. The US, Joe Biden's Democrats' deficit, the pandemic deficit. What did we say? We said $13 trillion of deficit spending. Expanded private net wealth. There's a big statement. So I was like, ooh. So again, I was like, I don't understand that. I get that it increases the banking reserves. I understand that the sale of the government debt, which comes a little bit removed, but it comes shortly afterwards. And I get that it transforms, that it drains those reserves and it creates more government bonds. I get that. And that the government bonds are held by the private sector. But the private sector, don't they draw down their bank deposits to pay for the bonds? So I don't understand why it expands net wealth. And Steve and gang are like, I wish I could do an Aussie accent. I know I've got some great, amazing Australian listeners. I will not offend you. But Steve would say, hey, listen, no one in the private sector owes that $1 billion. Remember I was saying, like, the last thing the government does in the fiscal years, it spends $1 billion with a contractor. No one in the private sector owes that billion. It's the government that owes that billion, not another private entity. And it's like, okay, okay. But surely that's inflationary. I mean, I'm using my phosphate font. Is it inflationary? Question mark. And this is where it gets, I like this section of the argument. God, where are we? We're really, really long. Oh my God, hope this isn't 2 hours. Inflationary or not, depends on the economy's slack. So the deficit, it adds clearly to nominal demand. And this is woolly, but if there's spare capacity, unemployed people, idle factories, then the extra deposits in the banking sector, the extra wealth of the private sector will be absorbed as output. And you're like, aha. Hold on. So we talk about the disinflation stroke deflation of China. What does China do? It amasses an enormous amount of surplus productive capacity, huge surpluses beyond its capacity to absorb domestically, which leads to, I mean, I know there's only 4% unemployed in the US, but definitions and all the like. But it leads to spare capacity in the world. We've got a deficiency of private sector demand. Because of that, companies just don't want to invest. When China, like my Nokia example, why would you invest if you're Nokia and Ericsson when Huawei doesn't have to make a profit? You kind of back off. So but China is the world's repository of surplus capacity, and China continues its spare capacity, continues to be the reason why the inflation of COVID, which was measured within the time constraints and the lockdown of factory and stock. So there was no spare capacity, and boom, you had prices rising at 9.3. But then as you opened up again the gates of the surplus capacity in the swing producer of the world, China, the inflation dropped, and it dropped rather rapidly to where are we? 3, with the Fed believing we could be back at target at 2%. So we're not now with tariffs. You're making it harder to call upon that surplus capacity. So we might be getting closer to a point where budget deficits actually correspond. That if you continue to run fiscal deficits faster than the system's ability, the system having kind of closed off China and its surplus capacity, that would create price inflation. So we'll have to watch that carefully. But I tell you where deficit financing is can't say 100%, but where the case and the argument and the evidence seems far more compelling. Deficit financing of the US government creates asset price inflation. The stock of net financial assets in the private sector rises because of the deficit. Now, all right, it can't be, it's not binary, it's not 100%. So, caveat. If you simply hold, the wealth of the private sector goes up by the deficit finance. So the wealth of the net wealth of the private sector has been going up at 6% per annum, owing to deficit financing by the US government. And we had the conversation about gold and the gold standard. and gold was collateral. Gold, and collateral is money. Gold is collateral. Collateral is money. Gold is money. Gold is a metallic monetary asset. And today, of course, in today's leveraged financial world, you take gold out and it's treasuries. Treasuries are not inert. And so, in terms of asset price inflation, the question is, what happens? What do the holders of these new treasuries do? If they are, I don't want to say sleepy, but let's say it's sleepy pension fund and they just harvest the bonds, and there are very few financial institutions of that nature anymore, then the treasuries may as well be inert. But you know and I know that that's not the case. And we use this, the euro dollar, the offshore euro dollar system. And private sector banks around the world, dealers, they rehypothecate the treasuries. They repo them. They build layers of synthetic liquidity. So when deficits expand, this $13 trillion of expansion, the collateral, the money is expanding. The money supply that goes by no name is not M. I mean, I guess ultimately it becomes M4, but it's not M0 because velocity of circulation has been falling for decades. But the mechanism that takes you from 4 trillion, 4.5, 5 trillion of M0 to 22 trillion of M2 is the treasury collateral that's pledged to fund margin, to write derivatives, to finance equity positions. You know, again, I said to you with the portfolio that we're putting together, the asset portfolio, people think I've got $100 million fund and I'm fully invested in equities. So what did I say, $1 billion fund. And so $1 billion has left. I've used $1 billion of cash and I bought equities. We don't do that. I've got cash. The dealer loves it. It's collateral. And he's like, yeah, here are the equities. You're buying them on margin. That's how the world works. So re-leveraging treasuries issuing treasuries and then those treasuries being re-leveraged is arguably why Caterpillar, let's bring it all together, why Caterpillar in the third quarter of this year exceeded revenue estimates by $1 billion. It is why Nvidia today became a $5 trillion company and why Microsoft and Apple are $4 trillion. Because deficits and budget deficits, they don't always, and they perhaps, in a world with China and its mercantilist policies, US deficits will not spill into the supermarket, the CPI. But those deficits will seep into the trading book. Let's see if I can summarize. A treasury bond sitting quietly in a pension fund is sterile. But the same bond that's pledged in repo becomes money. Again, the danger is not consumer inflation, it's leverage-driven asset inflation. It's a bubble in the mirror of what we regard as the safe asset, the risk-free asset, the bubble in the risk-free asset. I'm going to take a moment, I'm going to think about that. The Eurodollar system takes those treasuries and it creates financial oxygen. It's the price reflexivity that people don't recognize in fiscal policy. The greatest investors decry budget deficits, deficit financing. And yet those deficits, when they rise, the collateral expands, the leverage builds, and you get a phenomenal ramp in this fuzzy, cloud-like money, but it's money. those treasuries funding the deficit, they don't lift consumer prices, but they lift risk appetite. So again, imagine I said to you $13 trillion of spending has now been financed by the issuance of $13 trillion of treasuries. Net private sector wealth has gone up by $13 trillion. But those $13 trillion have been rehypothecated, and they've had a velocity of circulation where $13 trillion, the effect of $13 trillion is arguably $200 trillion in terms of global financial asset price inflation. Kind of cool. Just letting that, again, let's just breathe. Breathe in, do the box. In through the nose, out through the mouth. So the danger isn't really that the government spends too much. In a world where China has ex ante decided to pursue a surplus savings strategy, the danger in the world is not that the US government spends too much. And yeah, I would say philosophically and qualitatively, it feels like the American government, those $13 trillion, were spending too much. But in our world, the danger isn't that they spend too much. The danger is that the financial system, that it treats every new treasury as an excuse to leverage up. And that's the story of the 2020s. And then I was saying, hey, Jamie Dimon, hello, can I speak to Jamie Dimon? Yeah, the chief executive of JP Morgan. Yeah, that guy. Hey, Jamie, can you tell me? I'm trying to work out. I understand there's $28 trillion of debt, public debt. And I know Jeff. Hey, Jeff's on the other line. Hey, Jeff Gunlatch, why do you keep? I saw you had a tweet today. You're like, the US debt now is 39 trillion. It's kind of like, hold on a second, Jamie, why does Jeff say $39 trillion? Because it's not double counting. And I know he's accurate, but I know he's a bit weird. Jeff, you're kind of weird. But Jamie, sorry, you there? Yeah. And Jamie, if you notice, like your compatriot at Citigroup's called Jane, and then the head of the central bank's called J Powell. Why do your names all begin with J? Sorry, Jeff, I'll be back to you in a second. Yeah, anyway, Jamie, what am I doing? I'm going crazy. I was saying that I didn't think that Jamie Dimon knew the composition of the debt outstanding between maturities. And 28 to 30 trillion to 39 trillion, there is debt liabilities issued between government agencies. Fugazi, Wugazi, ignore that nonsense. Anyway, 21% I discovered today. I think it's on, where was it? Peterson Foundation, somewhere like that. 21% of that 28 trillion is bills. 52% notes, 17% bonds. So there's about just under $5 trillion in maturities greater than 10 years. It's not a lot, people. It's not a lot. Because that 13 trillion, they've been issuing bills, they've been issuing kind of one year cash. And I should say Treasury collateral differs. The true risk-free collateral is the bill. You know, the price ain't gonna. Silicon Valley did not go bust owning 1-year Treasury securities. They went bust owning 30-year Treasury securities, and the price variance, and the markdown in the price owing to the inflation scale. So if I'm looking for collateral, the most pristine collateral is the bills. And the 13 trillion, they've overwhelmingly issued it with bills. So again, I set up a case where deficits increase net financial wealth. They do create a monetary collateral which can be rehypothecated and leveraged many, many times and create asset price inflation. And I've just said to you, the majority of that deficit financing was cash-like treasury bills, 1 year maturity. And that's the stuff that the broker-dealers love. And for sure, that's the stuff they're going to rehypothecate. The 10 and the 30-year treasuries are significant in a QE context because they are the bedrock price of credit for everything, for your mortgage, for everything. And as the Fed withdrew those securities, it was reducing the duration of the. So it was reducing the duration of the private sector wealth. So on the one hand, the deficit spending gave you incremental private sector net wealth. And on the other hand, the Fed was coming through and it was reducing the duration of that wealth by pulling those bonds out of private sector circulation. And so suddenly I'm the private sector and my duration has fallen and I've got to seek duration in other areas of the asset complex. And so I'm pushed out on the risk frontier and I'm buying long duration equities. Oh my God, what are long duration equities? The FANGs, the Metas, the Microsofts, the Apples, Nvidias. The fiscal monster is creating this monster of asset price inflation. So, I mean, I was playing around today with, we'd probably go to 10,000 before this thing ends. And I did have I must wrap this up. This is very indulgent of your time. The Fed had a meeting today. They cut interest rates by 25 basis points, and they indicated they're going to stop their quantitative tightening. So the Fed shrunk their holdings of US Treasuries by $1.5 trillion. We're guessing here, we think that $1.5 trillion would have been 10-year plus maturities. We don't know. So moving forward, you're most likely still going to have deficits of 6%. Now, what's happening? Yeah, the Fed again so it's been doing quantitative tightening, and so it's been putting, it's been, if you will, expanding fixed income duration assets back, pushing it back into the private sector, and which should mean that their demand for duration from other risk assets is more muted, but kind of like a bit late. You know, you've created this reflexive price loop in favor of Nvidia, et al. Getting bigger and bigger, and it's $1.5 trillion. I mean, that buys you a third of Nvidia, and that's the US government's quantitative tightening program. And it's over. And so now most likely quantitative easing again. That's all a bit of a mess. It's all a bit of a mess, but we don't really need it. The duration with quantitative easing, another thought, it made me go back and think about David Levinson, and the duration that causes huge whiplash to the private sector, commercial banks on mortgages. So again, these very, very small figures, small trillions, maturing, long-dated maturing treasuries, $4.8 trillion. Mortgages, private sector mortgages, $13 trillion. And changes in duration can have enormous whiplash effects on private sector wealth. I've got to just stop speaking, forgive me. We'll come back at it. Will I do Friday? I'm not sure. With George Gellman here, maybe I'll get him to interview me. I'm leaving you not with answers. I'm leaving you, I hope, provoked, wanting more. These are just, I was writing, you get the thing that stops the condensation on I didn't have beer, but on a beer bottle. It was on my can of Perrier, the beer mat. And I was writing on the back of these beer mats. And then I came back home and I put them onto my computer, and then I had a nap and I found this wonderful font. Anyway. More on MCT oil, the coconut oil that refreshes the mind. The next time I will have more of my genius pills and we'll crack through it perhaps quicker, but I hope it's not indulgent with your time. I'm being ponderous. I'm thinking in real time. And it's clumsy. And it's courageous. And it's courageous for you to listen. I am Hugh Hendry. I am the acid capitalist. I'm hiding my face. I'm opening up, and I'm saying, thank you, my brothers and sisters. Thank you for being there. Thank you for tuning in. And until the next time, the greatest of love and lots of kisses to you all. Bisous.